Silas Donovan's arms were full, one hand clutching a juice-stained backpack, the other trying to keep his daughter from flinging herself into the candy racks of the airport gift shop when he heard the soft, panicked cries of a toddler behind him. "Daddy, I want the sparkly one," shouted Daisy, tugging at a glitter-covered unicorn plush with the kind of determination only a 4-year-old could summon. "Not today, Bug," Silas muttered, crouching to her level. "We still have to make it to Gate 22 without you turning into a tornado, remember?" Daisy huffed, arms crossed, but he distracted her with a pack of stickers from his pocket. Crisis averted for now, then he heard it again, a small, scared voice, crying. He glanced over his shoulder. A little girl, no older than Daisy, stood frozen near the windows, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her tiny fists were clenched at her sides, her chest heaving with sobs. She looked lost, alone. "Stay right here," he told Daisy, guiding her to sit on the bench beside the check-in counter. "Don't move, I'm just helping someone, okay?" "Okay, Daddy," she said, already peeling stickers. He approached the little girl slowly, crouching down to her level. "Hey there, sweetheart, are you okay?" She shook her head violently, trying to back away. "It's okay." "I'm not gonna touch you," he said gently. "Where's your mom or dad?" Her lip trembled. I don't know." Silas scanned the area, still no one in sight. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small, plush giraffe. "My daughter's favorite, his name's Waffles. He's pretty good at keeping scary feelings away." The girl hesitated, then snatched Waffles from his hand and clutched it to her chest. "There you go," Silas said softly. "Waffles is on the job." A blur of movement appeared seconds later. A woman in heels, her chest rising and falling like she'd run from the other side of the terminal, skidded to a stop. "Darla," the little girl ran into her arms, breaking into fresh sobs. "I was right here, I turned away for 2 seconds," the woman said, hugging her tightly. "Thank God." Silas stood, brushing his jeans off, and gave a sheepish smile. "She was just scared, no harm done." The woman looked up and their eyes locked. She was striking, not just beautiful but poised, radiant. Her hair was pulled into a neat ponytail, her blouse spotless despite the chaos, and her watch was probably worth more than his monthly rent. But it wasn't that. It was the way her eyes softened when she saw him. The way her shoulders relaxed as if she'd expected judgment but got kindness instead. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice a little breathless. "No need," Silas said. "I've got a wild one myself, I get it." She looked past him. Daisy was still sitting on the bench, now carefully placing stickers on a juice box. Silas followed her gaze. "That's my kid, she's 4. And a menace." The woman laughed, the sound light and surprised like she hadn't done it in a while. "I'm Willow Trenton, and this is Darla." "Silas Donovan," he said, holding out a hand. "Nice to meet you." She hesitated for half a second, then shook it. Her grip was warm, steady. "Thank you again," she said, her tone gentler now. "You were calm, really calm. Most people would have just walked by." Silas shrugged. "She reminded me of my daughter." Willow's eyes flicked to Daisy again. "She's adorable." "She's trouble," Willow smiled. "The best kind." There was a pause. Not awkward, almost like a breath held between two strangers who weren't quite strangers anymore. "You flying out today?" she asked. "Yeah, home to Denver, visiting my sister for a few days." She nodded. "We're headed to New York, business and life." He didn't ask what kind of business. She didn't offer, but there was something in the way she said it, like she was carrying more than she let on. "Well," he said after a beat, "I should wrangle my kid before she starts decorating the floor with glitter." Willow smiled again, but this time softer. "Actually, wait," she said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a sleek, matte black card. "I know this is going to sound odd, but if you're ever in New York, give me a call. I owe you one." Silas took the card. It had only her name and a number, no company, no job title. Just Willow Trenton. He tucked it into his wallet without really thinking about it. "Thanks," he said. She leaned down to scoop up Darla, who had finally stopped crying and was now cuddling Waffles fiercely. "He can keep it," Silas said, nodding to the giraffe. Willow looked at him, something unreadable in her eyes. "I'll make sure he's well loved." They parted ways then. No fanfare, no promises. But as Silas walked away with Daisy skipping beside him, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had just shifted. 3 weeks later, Silas was back home in Denver, elbow deep in plumbing issues and overdue bills. He worked construction during the day, picked up odd jobs at night, and spent every spare second with Daisy. Life was a constant juggling act. He'd forgotten about the card, honestly. Until he found it again while digging through his wallet at the gas station, Willow Trenton. He stared at it for a long moment, then stuck it back in his pocket. It wasn't until 2 months later, when his company sent him to New York for a week-long renovation project, that he thought about calling her. It was stupid. She probably wouldn't remember him, but something inside him itched. He didn't have many people in his life. And she'd looked at him like he wasn't invisible. That counted for something. So one evening after putting Daisy to bed in the tiny rental apartment his company paid for, he dialed. 1 ring, 2, hello, her voice. Exactly as he remembered it. Hey, he said. It's Silas Donovan. From the airport, you gave me your card. A pause. Then, oh my God, Silas, I didn't think you'd actually call. I wasn't sure I would either, but I'm in New York for work. She was quiet for a second. Do you have plans tomorrow night? He blinked. Not really. Let me take you to dinner. He hesitated. With Daisy, of course with Daisy, Silas smiled. All right then. And just like that, everything changed. The restaurant wasn't what Silas expected. He'd mentally braced himself for white tablecloths, a dozen forks, and waiters who looked down their noses at anyone without cufflinks. But when the cab pulled up in front of a narrow brick building tucked between steel and glass towers, he blinked. A hand-painted sign above the door read, Mira's Kitchen. Inside, warm light spilled through the windows, flickering gently against the dark glass like a promise. He opened the door for Daisy, who clutched her tiny backpack with one hand and a crayon drawing in the other. She bounced inside, her curls bouncing with her. Willow was already seated at a corner table. She looked different, not like the polished woman from the airport. She wore a soft, oversized sweater and jeans, her hair falling loose over her shoulders. She was leaning over a plate of bread, tearing off pieces for Darla, who sat beside her with a juice cup and a smile. When Willow saw them, something lit in her face. Not surprise, not relief, something quieter, like she'd been waiting for this without realizing it. Silas guided Daisy by the shoulders. Say hi. Hi, Daisy chirped, sliding into the seat beside Darla without hesitation. Willow looked up at him. You came. He eased into the chair opposite her. You said dinner. I wasn't sure you'd say yes. I wasn't sure you meant it. A quiet laugh slipped out of her as she reached for the pitcher of water. You want some? Sure, he said, then nodded toward the exposed kitchen in the back. A woman with silver hair stirred a pot the size of a suitcase. This your spot? Willow poured the water before answering. Sort of. Mira's an old friend. She started this place when she was 48 and didn't know a single banker who'd give her a loan. I helped her open it. Silas looked around. The walls were covered in framed black and white photos, families, couples, babies. The air smelled like roasted garlic and something buttery. She's not here tonight, Willow added, but she always saves me this table. Impressive, he said. You feed all your airport heroes like this. Willow tilted her head, a curve teasing her lips. Just the ones with daughters who give away stuffed animals without hesitation. Daisy pulled a bread roll from the basket and whispered something to Darla, who giggled. The two girls were already plotting a crayon-powered masterpiece on the back of a menu. Willow's eyes drifted to them. They seem like they've known each other forever. They're both little hurricanes, Silas said. Makes sense they'd find each other. A server appeared, setting down plates of crisp flatbread with hummus and roasted vegetables. Silas reached for one without hesitation, then paused. You sure this place is okay with kids? Willow leaned back, folding her arms. This place was built for families who don't fit into boxes. They ate while the girls colored and swapped snacks. For a while, the conversation stayed light: what schools were like in Denver, how Darla loved whales, how Daisy insisted on wearing mismatched socks as a form of protest. But eventually, Silas turned to her, wiping his hands on a napkin. So what is it you do exactly? Willow didn't flinch. She took a sip of her tea, then met his gaze. I manage a portfolio of companies, mostly startups, some real estate, a few tech ventures. He raised an eyebrow. That sounds huge. It can be, she said. But I've got good people. I do more guiding than managing these days. Silas leaned back. You always been in that world. Her fingers tapped lightly against her glass. No, I started out in accounting, then consulting. Followed the ladder until I couldn't breathe anymore, so I jumped off, he blinked. Jumped off, started over, built my own firm, invested in people I believed in. It got bigger than I expected. That explained the confidence. The way she looked at people like she saw the cracks and the gold inside them all at once. Do you miss anything about the old life? He asked. Willow glanced toward Darla, who was now braiding Daisy's hair with intense concentration. I miss silence and time. But I'd trade both again for her. Silas nodded slowly. He understood that trade. It was one he made every day. After dessert, 2 orders of warm apple cake with cinnamon cream and a shared scoop of vanilla ice cream for the girls Willow offered to walk them back. The night air was crisp, the sidewalks slick with the shine of recent rain. Daisy and Darla walked ahead, stepping over puddles like they were lava. Willow tucked her hands into her coat pockets. You're a good father. He laughed under his breath. You saw us for, 90 minutes? I saw enough, she said. You listened to her, that's rarer than you think. He didn't answer, not right away. He watched Daisy twirl, her laughter echoing between buildings. I had to learn, he said finally. Her mom left when she was 2. I didn't have a manual, just trial and error. Willow didn't ask for details. She didn't press. And that silence felt more respectful than pity ever could. They reached the building his company had rented for them. There was a doorman, a cracked tile in the entryway, and a single flickering light bulb near the elevator. I should get her to bed, he said. Willow looked down at Darla, who was practically asleep on her feet. Same. The girls hugged like they were parting after a decade instead of a single evening. Silas bent to pick Daisy up, her arms curling around his neck. Willow touched his arm lightly. This was good. Yeah, he said. It really was. She hesitated, then pulled a small envelope from her coat pocket. I wasn't sure if I'd give you this, but I want to. He took it, puzzled. Open it later, she said. Not now. Before he could ask anything more, she turned, scooped Darla into her arms, and disappeared into a waiting black SUV that rolled up with the precision of a well-timed cue. He carried Daisy upstairs, unlocked the door, and laid her gently on the bed without waking her. Then he turned on the lamp and opened the envelope. Inside was a note written in elegant, slanted script. If you ever want to see what the world looks like from the other side of the glass, there's a fundraiser this Friday. Bring Daisy, no suits required. Below it, a simple invitation. No company name, no logo, just an address and Willow's initials at the bottom. SD stared at it for a long time. Then he set it on the counter, next to the empty juice cup and the crayon drawing of 2 girls holding hands under a rainbow. He didn't know what he was walking toward. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid to find out. Silas adjusted the collar of his shirt for the 4th time, eyeing his reflection in the narrow hallway mirror of the apartment. It wasn't a suit, he didn't own one, but he'd found a clean button down and managed to press it using the bottom of a pot and a towel. Daisy, sitting cross-legged on the couch in a navy blue dress with a sparkly belt she picked out herself, watched him curiously. Why do you look like you're going to a school meeting? She asked, swinging her legs. He knelt in front of her and clipped a tiny silver barrette into her hair. Because someone invited us to something fancy and your dad's trying not to look like he got lost on his way to the hardware store. Will there be cake? She asked seriously. Probably, he said. But you gotta use your big girl manners, all right. I have manners, she replied, offended. I didn't sneeze in my hand once today. A black car pulled up outside, and Silas scooped her up before she could dart toward the door barefoot. He hadn't expected Willow to send a car. He hadn't expected any of this. The driver nodded politely but didn't say anything, and the silence that followed was filled with the hum of traffic and Daisy singing softly to herself. The address led to an old museum tucked between modern buildings, its marble steps bathed in golden light. There were people in gowns and pressed tuxedos milling outside, the air filled with laughter and the click of polished shoes on stone. Silas hesitated when the driver opened the door. It wasn't nerves. It was the sudden realization that this was her world: tall ceilings, whispered greetings, and chandeliers too big to fit in most rooms. But Daisy jumped out ahead of him, tugging his hand. Come on, Daddy, A woman in a floor-length dress greeted them at the entrance, her expression warming when she saw Daisy's tiny shoes and Silas's hesitant posture. "You must be Mr. Donovan," she said, offering a hand. "Miss Trenton said to expect you." He shook it, unsure what else to say, and followed her through towering doors into a space that made him stop short. The main hall was lit by dozens of suspended lanterns, each one housing a candle that flickered like stars above. Along the walls were massive canvases painted by children wild, bold colors that clashed beautifully with the elegance around them. "Daddy, look," Daisy whispered, pointing to a painting with a purple dinosaur wearing a crown. "That's what I drew yesterday." Willow appeared at his side like she'd stepped out of the light itself. She wore a sleek black jumpsuit, her hair pulled back with a delicate silver pin. She wasn't flashy, just quietly stunning, like a secret only a few people knew. "You made it," she said, her eyes sweeping over them. "Barely," Silas admitted. "Had to bribe a 5-year-old with the promise of cake." Willow crouched and looked at Daisy. "I heard there's an entire table of desserts shaped like animals. Want to help me find it?" Daisy's eyes went wide. "Even giraffes, especially giraffes." She took the child's hand and led her toward the back, where music played softly and people sipped drinks from delicate glasses. Silas followed slowly, feeling the weight of eyes on him but not in a harsh way. Curious, maybe, or surprised. A man with salt and pepper hair approached, holding 2 glasses. "You're Donovan?" he asked, offering one. Silas took it, nodding. "Yeah, and you are?" Grayson Lorne. "Willow and I sit on a few boards together. I've heard some things." Silas raised an eyebrow. "Good things. Depends who's telling them," Grayson replied, then gave a half smile. "She doesn't bring people here often, or ever." Silas glanced across the room where Willow was kneeling beside Daisy, pointing out a cake shaped like a panda. "I'm not really here," he said. "Just visiting." Grayson studied him for a moment. "She's more herself around you than I've seen in years. That's rare." Before Silas could respond, Willow returned with a napkin full of tiny animal-shaped cookies. Daisy trailed behind, munching on something that looked like a sugar-coated elephant. "Grayson," Willow said with a nod, then turned to Silas. "Want to see the gallery?" He nodded and followed her through an archway lined with string lights. The next room was quieter, the noise from the main hall fading behind velvet curtains. Paintings lined the walls, some abstract, some simple, all created by children from the outreach program the fundraiser supported. "Most of these kids don't have a safe place to sleep," Willow said, her voice low. "But they still managed to create something beautiful." Silas studied a painting of a blue house with a red door. The brushstrokes were messy, wild with color and hope. "You fund all this?" "I started it 10 years ago," she said, "after Darla came into my life. I didn't want her to grow up thinking the world didn't need fixing." He turned to her. "You don't talk much about her dad." Willow's posture shifted slightly, but her voice didn't waver. "He left before she was born, said he wasn't cut out for it. I believed him." Silas didn't press. He didn't need to. They stood in silence for a long moment, the hum of distant music wrapping around them like a blanket. "I didn't invite you here because I wanted to impress you," she said finally. "I just wanted you to see this part of me. I'm not sure I fit in here," he admitted. Willow stepped closer. "You're raising a daughter by yourself. You show up, you give more than you have. If that doesn't fit here, then this place doesn't deserve you." He looked down at her hand, so close to his. "I don't know what this is, Willow. I'm not rich, I'm not polished. I work with my hands and half my clothes have drywall dust in the pockets." She met his eyes. "And I'm a woman who's spent most of her life surrounded by people who say the right things and mean none of them." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "You're not what I expected. Neither are you." They didn't kiss, not yet, but something passed between them, a quiet agreement, a promise that hadn't found its words yet. From the next room, a child's laughter rang out and Willow smiled. "Come on," she whispered. "Before Daisy eats the entire giraffe." He followed her back through the curtain, into the soft light and the hum of possibility. Tonight hadn't changed who he was, but it had changed what he believed could be. The air outside the museum was cooler than expected, the breeze carrying the faint scent of lilacs from the courtyard garden. Silas held Daisy's hand as they stepped into the night, her fingers sticky from icing, her eyelids beginning to droop. Willow walked beside them, Darla asleep against her shoulder, bundled in a soft blanket one of the staff had found. Neither of them spoke as they approached the waiting car. The driver opened the door and Silas paused. "I think we'll walk," he said, glancing down at Daisy. "She needs the fresh air before bedtime." Willow didn't question it. She shifted Darla slightly and nodded to the driver, who gave a small bow and returned to his seat. They started down the quiet sidewalk together, the city dim behind them. "You didn't look uncomfortable tonight," Willow said softly. "I was," Silas replied. "But not because of the tuxedos or the wine I couldn't pronounce. It was because—" He hesitated, then looked at her. "It's been a long time since I've had someone look at me like I belonged somewhere unexpected." Willow adjusted the blanket around Darla. "You didn't just belong there, you elevated the room." He gave a short laugh. "That's generous." "No, that's honest," she said. "You were kind to everyone. You saw the art like it mattered, and you didn't try to impress anyone. That's rare." Daisy tugged at his sleeve. "Can I ride on your shoulders?" "Sure, Bug," he said, lifting her easily. "But only if you promise not to fall asleep up there." Willow watched them for a moment. "She adores you." "She's stuck with me," Silas said. "I'm all she's got." Willow stopped walking. "You're more than that." He looked at her, the words catching in his throat. "Why me?" he asked finally. "You're in a different world. You could be with someone who owns half of Manhattan." She shifted Darla gently, then stepped closer. "Because when my daughter was terrified, you didn't look around for someone else to fix it. You just acted. And when you looked at me, you didn't see a name or a number. You saw a mom. That's the only world I want to live in." They stood there, framed by the glow of a quiet street lamp, and something inside Silas eased, not the tension of a long day or the weight of responsibility. Something deeper. The ache of being unseen for too long. "I don't know if I can give you the life you're used to," he said. "I don't want the life I'm used to," Willow replied. "I want something real, and I want it with you." A cab passed slowly, headlights sweeping over them, and Daisy yawned above him, resting her cheek against his head. "I should get her home," he said. Willow nodded. "Let me call someone to help with Darla. I'll come with you." "You sure?" he asked. "I've never been more sure of anything." They reached the apartment just as Daisy began to nod off completely. Willow called her assistant, and within 20 minutes, a familiar older woman arrived at the door to take Darla for the night. Silas watched the exchange silently, unsure what to say as Willow stepped into his living room. It was small. Lived in. A few toys scattered near the couch, a dish towel hanging off the armrest, but she didn't look uncomfortable. She looked at home. "I have a lot of questions," he said, setting Daisy gently on her bed and closing the door. "So ask," Willow replied. He came back into the room and leaned against the wall. "What do you want from this?" "From me?" She walked to the window, looking out at the modest skyline. "I want mornings where you burn the toast and she laughs at us both. I want to meet you halfway, wherever that is. And I want to stop pretending like I'm not terrified of being alone." Silas stepped forward. "You're not alone." Willow turned, her eyes shining but steady. "Neither are you." He reached for her hand. "I'm not perfect, Willow. I mess up more than I get it right." "I don't need perfect," she said. "I need honest." She leaned in, and this time the space between them disappeared. The kiss wasn't rushed or uncertain. It was quiet and complete. Like coming home, when they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "So what now?" he asked. "I have a plane to Paris in 3 days," she said. "It's a board meeting I can't miss, but I want you and Daisy to come with me," he blinked. "I can't just take off work." "I already spoke to your foreman," she said, smiling gently. "He said you had unused vacation time. And I may have promised him box seats to a game he can't get into. You called my boss. I'm resourceful." He stared at her, then laughed. "You're unbelievable." "No," she said. "I just finally found someone who makes all of this worth changing for." He kissed her again, slower this time, like he was learning her rhythm, and she was learning his. Daisy wandered into the room, rubbing her eyes. "Are you staying for pancakes tomorrow?" she asked Willow. Willow crouched beside her. "Only if I get to help make them." "Daddy burns them," Daisy warned. "Then I'll bring syrup," she said. Daisy nodded, satisfied, and padded back to bed. Silas looked at her for a long moment. "You really see a future in this?" Willow stepped into his arms. "I see everything I didn't even know I needed." And for the first time in years, Silas didn't feel like he was holding up the sky alone. He was holding it with her. The Parisian morning was pale gold, casting long shadows across the suite's marble floor. Silas stood at the window, coffee in hand, watching the city stretch awake beneath a pastel sky. The Eiffel Tower loomed in the distance, half shrouded in a light mist. Behind him, Willow emerged from the bedroom with a yawn, wrapped in one of the oversized hotel robes. Her hair was still damp from the shower. She padded across the room barefoot, pausing to kiss his shoulder before pouring herself a cup of coffee. "You didn't sleep," she said, not accusing, just observing. "I slept," he replied, then added, "Eventually, you were thinking." He didn't answer immediately. Willow leaned back against the kitchen island, sipping slowly. "I was thinking about how I ended up here," he said. "In Paris, in a penthouse, with you." She raised an eyebrow. "Any conclusions?" "That maybe I'm dreaming," he said. "And I'm gonna wake up back in Denver with drywall under my nails." She crossed the room and took his cup, setting it on the table before sliding her hands around his waist. "You're not dreaming," she said. "And even if you were, I wouldn't let you wake up." He kissed her temple, letting the quiet hold them for a moment. Then a sharp knock rattled the door. Daisy's voice rang through from the other side, muffled but unmistakable. "I smell pancakes," Willow laughed and pulled away to open the door. Daisy barreled in, still in pajamas, her hair a wild tumble of curls. Behind her, a young woman named Elise, the travel nanny Willow had hired, trailed in with a knowing smile and a bag of coloring books. Daisy clambered onto the couch and pointed at the breakfast cart. "Are those croissants?" "Can I have 3? Willow nodded. "Only if you can say it in French." Daisy puffed out her cheeks. "Croissant." Close enough. Silas watched them with quiet awe. This wasn't just a vacation. It was a new rhythm, a new life, and it was starting to feel like something permanent. Later that afternoon, Willow took him to see the studio space she was considering purchasing on the left bank, a sun-drenched loft with exposed beams, a rooftop garden, and enough room to host children's art programs. She gestured to the far wall, where light pooled like honey. "I want to turn this into a gallery space," she said. "Not for investors, for the kids. Their work deserves to be seen." Silas walked to the window, taking in the view of the Seine. "You're really doing it, not just talking about it." "I've been talking about it too long," she said. "I want a life I don't need permission to build." He turned to her. "And you want me in it, not just want," she said. "Need, you and Daisy are the part I didn't know was missing." That night they went to a small bistro tucked beneath a canopy of flowering vines. No flash, no cameras. Just the 4 of them: Willow, Silas, Daisy, and Darla, eating grilled fish and warm bread while street musicians played soft jazz nearby. After dinner, they strolled along the Seine. Darla sat on Willow's shoulders, humming, while Daisy skipped ahead, clutching a tiny sketchpad she'd been gifted by a waiter who overheard her describing the Eiffel Tower as pointy and magical. Silas reached out and took Willow's hand. She looked up at him, surprised by the sudden seriousness in his eyes. "I don't have a ring yet," he said. "I didn't plan this, but I've never been more certain about anything." Willow's breath caught. "I want to build a life with you," he said. "Not just a shared calendar or split holidays. I mean all of it, the late nights, the early mornings, the hard stuff, the beautiful stuff." She stepped closer, eyes full. "You don't have to ask, I do," he said, reaching into his jacket and pulling out a small velvet box. "Because I want to do this right." He opened it. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond nestled in a platinum band, something timeless. Willow covered her mouth with her hand. "I know this isn't how it's usually done," he said, "but nothing about us has been usual. And I don't want to wait another day." She took the box, then looked at him through tears. "You're insane." "Probably," he said. "I love you," she whispered. "Then marry me." "Yes," she said. "Yes, yes, yes." Daisy and Darla, sensing the shift in tone, ran over. Daisy looked up at her dad. "Did you just get engaged?" Willow laughed through her tears and crouched down. "We did," Darla clapped. "Does that mean I get to keep Daisy forever?" Silas ruffled her hair. "Looks like it." 1 year later, they were married on a cliffside in Positano, surrounded by wildflowers and the sound of waves crashing below. Willow wore a dress that shimmered like moonlight, and Silas wore a suit that Daisy helped pick out. The vows weren't scripted. They were messy, heartfelt, full of laughter and tears. Darla and Daisy stood beside them, holding hands like they'd always belonged there. Afterward, they danced under the stars. No cameras, no press, just real moments shared with people who mattered. Back in New York, Willow stepped down from 3 of her boards and focused on her foundation. Silas opened his own custom renovation firm, working with his hands again, but this time with the freedom to choose his projects. The loft on the left bank became an artist residency, hosting children from around the world. They built a home in both cities, an airy Brooklyn brownstone filled with art and laughter, and a summer cottage in the Colorado mountains where they escaped when the city became too loud. Their lives weren't perfect. There were stressful days, missed flights, tantrums, and all the challenges that came with blending 2 families and 2 worlds. But each night, when Willow curled against Silas and Daisy whispered goodnight from down the hall, when Darla crawled into their bed during thunderstorms and Silas wrapped them all up in his arms, it was clear. They hadn't just fallen in love, they'd built something stronger. Something unshakable, something real forever.